What is going on, my friend? It is Danny here from projectmanaverse.com, real world technical project management for beginners. And in this video, I'm going to give you 6 tools to help you with your project planning. I'll briefly explain what I mean by a planning tool. I'll tell you why it's important that you use these and understand these as a project manager and why planning is so important for a project manager. And then I'll go on to the tool. So let's get started. What do I mean by a planning tool? Well, a planning tool is there to just help you do exactly that. It's to help you plan as a project manager. And there can be various forms of planning tools. It could be a piece of software, it could be a template, it could be a process to follow, a guide, it could be a calculation, it could be a certain type of meeting, various tools you can have, but the tool is essentially there to make the planning process easier and more accurate and more reliable. So why should you care about planning as a project manager? Well, planning is without a doubt the project manager's number one responsibility of all the responsibilities, in my opinion, and in probably shared with many project managers. That is the number one responsibility. It's unequivocal in terms of who should be doing the planning on a project. It is the project manager. So you will definitely need to know how to do it. And if you want your project to be a success, you better learn how to do it well. Number 2, I think the project plan is the project manager's number one tool. It's the most useful tool you'll have in your toolkit, and you should be using it all the time, and you should really get good at the skill of planning and the skill of planning management. So that's why you should understand it. And yeah, without a plan, it's basically chaos. You need the plan for so many reasons. You need to know what the deadlines are going to be, when the key milestones are, how long everything is going to take, who should be doing what on any given day. Without a plan, it is just basically chaos, and change becomes very chaotic. And I always say that a project manager's responsibility is to bring order from chaos, and the project plan will help you to do that. So that's what a project planning tool is, and I've said why it's important. So let's now go into the tools themselves. So I'm going to give you 3 tools to assist with long-term planning, and I'm going to give you 3 tools to assist with short-term planning. So let's start with the long-term planning tools. So the first long-term planning tool is the work breakdown structure. I love the work breakdown structure. Now, the work breakdown structure does exactly what it says on the tin. It breaks down all the work in your project into a nice, organized structure that you can refer to and use as a foundation for your planning. So what the work breakdown structure will do is basically take the highest level of work, which is your entire project, and say that is one block. Basically, that goes at the top of the work breakdown structure. And then what it does, it breaks down that top structure, that top block, into smaller pieces. Let's say about 4 or 5 smaller pieces. So if you had to combine all these 4 or 5 pieces together, they would make that one block. So it's breaking it out, breaking it down into that next level of detail. Then every single block breaks down into further levels of detail. So you've got almost like a pyramid of work. You could click on one block and that could expand out into several elements. Then you click on another element and that could expand out. So an example could be building a car. So the overall block, the top block, is the car itself. That breaks down into, I don't know much about cars, but like the chassis and the underlying axles and the wheels and the interior. But basically, you can imagine, right, the car can break down into loads of components. The tire can break down into the hubcap and the the little twisty thing on the tire. You can break down every element of the car into smaller pieces. The headlamp's got the bulb in it and it's got some wiring and all that kind of stuff. So that's what it does. It gives you the ingredients for your project. All the elements, the small elements that need to go into your work to create your project, go into the work breakdown structure. And you can go to very detailed level, you can go into mid-level. It's up to you in terms of how detailed you want to go. There's a point where you don't get any return on your investment for time, but yeah, if you have a lot of time and resources to create one, it's a very useful tool. Why is it useful for planning? Because once you have your work breakdown structure, you can easily package up all the tasks and assign them to people. You can make it more real in your time, in your mind, in terms of how long that piece of work, that element, is going to take, and how many people are going to need to work on it. Is it just 1 engineer, 2 engineers? How many weeks is it going to take? So once you do that, you know what each element of work is, you can translate that into a plan. You can say, right, this task is going to start on this date and it's going to take 10 days for one person, and you can just transfer each element of your work breakdown structure onto your long-term plan and build it up that way. And when you have all the pieces on your plan, you can start to find economies of scale by doing things in parallel, or getting one person to do two things, or whatever you want to do. But that is the number one tool for the assisting in the long-term planning. It's a work breakdown structure. What's next? The next one is the project life cycle. Now, the project life cycle, if you don't know what it is, I've mentioned it in previous videos. It's basically a framework that breaks up the project. And this life cycle is very common across projects across the industry. So your first phase would be the design phase, or the define phase, and then you go into your build phase, and then you go into your testing phase, then you go into your deployment phase where you're deploying your code, putting it into live, and then you go into your project warranty, benefits, and closure phase. So those 5 phases are pretty much consistent across all kinds of projects, no matter what you're doing in the technical space. So what this tool does, it provides a framework to get the plan started. If you have no idea where to start, you can break down the project into these swim lanes. So your design phase, or your define phase, then your testing phase, and then your build phase, then your deployment phase, and your benefits and project closure. And it will follow a waterfall style plan if you do that. So you have the activities kind of look like a waterfall. That's where the word comes from. So it's a good starting point. If you don't know where to start, break it up into swim lanes, do that, and you think, right, what are all the what are all the design activities, what are all the build activities, what are all the testing activities? So you can go straight into a framework, and it gives you a place to start. The next tool for long-term planning is a plan on a page, which I personally love. It's my number one tool. Can't go without my plan on a page. And of course it's a project plan, but it's just a summarized version. It's a high-level task, and you can fit it on one page, and you can see the entire picture from a distance, zoomed out version, so you can really see the wood from the trees, rather than going straight into Excel and trying to do it line by line. Start with a plan on a page and get the high-level activities. You could even do the project lifecycle as a framework to begin, and then think about those high-level tasks in each one. But it really allows you to quickly get something on a page, and you could even do this by yourself. I do it a lot before a planning workshop with my whole team. When I'm trying to get a proper plan together, I'll have a first stab myself, and I'll do a plan on a page, key activities, key kind of milestones, like we're going live this date, you want to go into build this date, we want to exit testing this date, and then you can use that as your starting point. And then throughout the rest of the project, it's a very useful tool to have, because it really helps to explain what's going in the project. People can get that zoomed out view of what's happening, and it really helps with your prioritization and understanding what the day-to-day activities need to be, what's coming up, planning for risks, and all that good stuff. So those are the tools for the long-term planning. So we had the work breakdown structure, we had the project life cycle, and then we have the project plan on a page. Okay, the next tools are regarding short-term planning. So short-term planning is more about the next 2 weeks, the next 4 weeks, the next few weeks ahead, basically. So the first tool is called the 2-week look ahead. 2-week look ahead. And what that basically does, it just looks ahead for the next 2 weeks, and you just put down everything that needs to get done in the next 2 weeks in quite a lot of detail, because it's quite hard to get a detailed plan for the entire length of the project plan, and it's not always worth it, because things always change on projects, and you could spend a long time doing a detailed plan for the entire length of the project, but by the time you've finished that plan, you have to go back and start changing things, because things always change, issues come up, risks come up, and the unexpected will take your plan off course. So it's best the further you go out, the less detailed planning you do, the closer you are, the more detailed planning you do. So the 2-week look ahead is a great activity to do, either by yourself or with your team. What I like to do is do it on like a Thursday or Friday. Look at my project plan, the high level one. Think, right, what's coming up in the next 2 weeks? What were all the detailed steps that need to happen? You can either get that on just a list of activities, or what I like to do is get like the old calendar, the wall calendar view, when you got the big blocks of each day is a big block on there. So I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 2 weeks. And then I have like milestones. I don't do chevrons for lengths of activity. All I want is the milestones. What are the key meetings? What are the key milestones? And then I just color code them. And I don't bother to rag them, put them red, amber, or green. I just want to know what they are when they're coming up. And then you can review that with your team ahead of the 2 weeks. And then every day for the project, basically, we just bring up that and say, right, what's happening for the next few days? What's happening next week? What do we need to think about to make sure those things happen? Have they happened? Reflect on the plan, what's happened. But yeah, that's a really good short-term planning tool. It's called the 2-week look ahead. Okay, next is the backlog. And I've always been resistant to agile working, which is a bit more fancy, Scrum and 2-week sprints and all that good stuff. But I am warming to the backlog, which is often manifested in their Jira software. So the backlog is basically just a bunch of tickets that represent work that you need to do. You have a ticket for each piece of work, and then you can track the progress of that work by putting it in the backlog or putting it in progress or putting it as done. You can have further different definitions and breakdowns of that if you want to, but it's a nice way to just visually see what work is going on at that time for the next couple of weeks, who's doing it, and you can see how much work people have because it's represented by the number of tickets they have on their screen. If you click on their name, you can see all their tickets on the backlog going through. But this is a useful tool because it helps you to just think about and prioritize work, because it helps you to think about who is doing what, how much people work, how much work people have on their plates, who has got the least work, who can take a bit more. And if you do have a backlog, you can just bring that up and think, right, the next 2 weeks, we've got a bit of capacity. What else can we do for the next 2 weeks that's waiting on the backlog to be done, that isn't on our plan for whatever reason? And yeah, you can just bring it in. So that's quite a useful tool as well, is the backlog for short-term planning. And the last tool I want to talk about for short-term planning is actually a tool I created myself. And I created it when I got my first really big project in my first role as a lead project manager many years ago. And the project was a nightmare. It was a big upgrade, big expensive one, £2 million. It was it was a big project for me. It was a stretch project, and it was just hell. And I was not very new to project management, but it was the first time I led a big project, and I certainly wasn't in the place I am now, let's say that. And my governance and my disciplines weren't quite up to scratch, or was my skills and experience, as you can imagine it being my first project. But anyway, I remember one particular weekend, I was just feeling a bit overwhelmed by the project, thinking about it, thinking, oh God, I've got so much to do. And it was very foggy, and I thought, there's so many pockets of work to do, pockets I've got to do this, and grey areas, and it was very foggy. There wasn't much structure or clarity. And I just did an exercise. I kind of locked myself in my office, and I thought, right, I just want to think about I want to get it out of my head onto paper. What are all the sections of work that I need to do that I've got floating around my head? I want to get that down on paper. So the first thing I did was I did that, just one post-it note, not post-it note, but those revision cards, those card things you get. I did one of those for each area of work. And I thought, right, for each of these areas of work, what is the actual outcome, the ultimate outcome for the project? And not only that, what is a tangible outcome? I want to be able to visualize it so it's not vague and foggy, because it's really important. I always say it, project manager's responsibility is to bring order from chaos and clarity from nebulae. Okay, so just get rid of that fog. You want it crystal clear. You want to get rid of all that fog and that uncertainty and make everything very crystal clear and very organized. So the way to do that is to get very clear on the outcome of the piece of work. And the way to do that is to visualize it, see it in your mind's eye. It's hard to visualize technical project management things because it's not that tangible. It's pixels on the screen, but the activities that you're doing in the work can be visualized. So try and visualize an actual outcome. So is it a tangible outcome? Is it an email with a sign off from a senior leader saying, yes, I approve this? Is that your outcome? Would that be like the final tick in the box that you've done that piece of work? Is it a document that you can print out and you can visualize that the document is done? Is it someone in a classroom delivering some training? What's the outcome? That's what you need. Step one, outcome, tangible outcome. And then step two, what's the next step to be able to get there? Don't worry about the exact plan to how you're going to get all the way there, because that causes anxiety. It takes a lot of planning and it stops you from thinking about it. But you can make it easy, make it a baby step. Just what's the next step? If I just do this next step, the next step will become apparent. So do those two things for each area of work that you've got a bit of fog and anxiety about. What's the tangible outcome and what is the next step? And that will help with your short-term planning, because now you know what to do in the short term. You can get on with it. You can stop procrastinating, because when things are vague and you're uncertain, it's easy to push them aside and procrastinate, because it's just, you think, oh, I just don't know what to do. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to face that right now. But just face it by thinking about the tangible outcome. See it in your mind's eye. Right, what is the next step to get to that outcome? Get that down on a stack of paper and you're golden. Okay, I've gone quite over today. I didn't mean to be going this far with the video, but hopefully those tools were useful for you. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and until the next time, please take care.